It's the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in.
All right, so as I mentioned, we are going to be discussing creative real estate, so finance, owner finance. They become very interchangeable, just depending on your situation. So first, we can hop into the definition. What is seller financing? I didn't like pull out the Google definition. This is just what I think of when I think of seller financing, and basically, it's an agreement between the buyer and the seller of a piece of property. And with this agreement, that buyer does not have to bring all of the funds to the closing. There's an agreement to where the seller will allow that buyer to make payments over time. Most people, it can be a 5-year note, 10-year note, 15-year note, 30-year note. It all just depends on what you negotiate with that seller. So long story short, you're able to make your payments to pay off their property in installments over time. So we got 3 C's, 3 different ways that we can acquire real estate. One is cash, and for most of us, that's finite. I know for me, it's finite, and that's oftentimes going to come from your bank account if you have some private lenders or hard money. Another way is with credit. And while it may be more than cash, credit is also finite because our credibility will determine how much credit we're able to get. And the main source of that is going to be banks. And creativity or knowledge is infinite because the main source is going to be your mind and your expertise and the seller's willingness. And this is just a visual. It's a couple different ways that you can finance your property. One is with the bank loan. Take out a mortgage through a bank or credit union on a stabilized property. You can also utilize hard money, AKA asset-based lending. And the lender is actually lending on that hard, unstable asset. So they're looking at the asset more than they are you. Not to say that they aren't looking at you as well, because most hard money lenders want to make sure that you win. If the property doesn't sell, they want to make sure that you're bankable in case you need to get some other long-term financing to pay them off. And this loan is secured by the property. We also have private money. And private money is going to be individuals who lend out their money to investors. And this is oftentimes going to be secured with the first lien position on their property as well. Hard money also, they're going to place a first lien position on their property as well. And then the final one, which is why we're here, is seller finance. So as I mentioned, as opposed to having to bring that total purchase price to the closing, you're able to make payments over time. So these are 2 of the most common ways that property is transferred. These are the ways that I've transferred it. The most secure is going to be your warranty deed. And with the warranty deed, the seller, also known as the grantor, they're guaranteeing that they possess a clear title and that they also have the legal right to actually sell the property. This is going to provide you with the most protection when you're buying the property. And then the quitclaim deed, which I've also used again, the seller or the grantor, they make no guarantee that they possess clear title. They make no guarantee that they even own that property. And this provides the least amount of protection to the buyer. You may see a lot of quit with the T, not quick, transactions if someone is transferring property to their entity, or else someone may be transferring property amongst family members. Quitclaim deed is the quickest, it's the easiest, but you want to make sure that there aren't any other liens or encumbrances going on with that title, because that all is going to come when they quit all claims to the property and hand it over to you. So here is and this is all credit to Joe Crump. He's a gentleman that I learned this from, and it's the creative acquisition hierarchy. And I've also flipped it with the creative disposition hierarchy. So we'll go ahead and go down the creative acquisition hierarchy. So up top is going to be your subject to acquisition. And I have slides that will actually define all of these as well. So that's the best way to acquire. Next will be owner financing. And then the final way will be a lease with an option. And then when we're disposing of a property, or when we're selling a property, the number one way to sell it or dispose of it will be that lease with an option, then owner financing, and then subject to. You see, I have a red X going across it because I don't want you to ever sell a property subject to. So let's hop into some of these definitions of these creative terms here. So the lease with an option. So this agreement gives the renter or the tenant buyer the exclusive option to purchase the property during or at the end of an agreed upon term. You'll also hear this referred to as rent to own. Now, if I go back to my creative acquisition hierarchy, as we see when we're acquiring a property, lease option is down at the bottom. And that's only because when you are leasing a property from someone, you still don't own that property. So you don't have that total control like you would if you were taking a property over subject to, or even on the financing. However, we're real estate investors, so we don't sell how we buy. So when we sell a property, we want to try to maintain that control. So we sell it on a lease with an option or rent to own. And we have an agreed upon term that our tenant buyer, for example, let's say we give our tenant buyer 24 months to perform, get themselves bankable to where they can actually go out and secure their own financing to where they can pay you off. However, during that time, you're still maintaining control of the property because the deed's still in your name. Next is owner finance. So this agreement means that the owner agrees to accept their equity in monthly installments over time. Most commonly, the balance will be amortized over a set time period. This transaction will be secured with the deed of trust, and the terms will be spelled out with the promissory note. So that deed of trust is a security instrument. And what I mean when I say secure is if you get out of pocket, if you default, if you stop making your payments, then they can legally foreclose on you in order to get the property back. And the promissory note, that's your promise to pay. It's going to have the terms, when you're going to pay, how much you're going to pay, interest rate, things like that is all going to be included in that promissory note. And lastly, or at the top of the acquisition hierarchy, is going to be subject to. And this here is an acquisition strategy where you buy a property while keeping that existing financing in place, hence subject to the existing financing. So with this, the deed will transfer over to that purchaser or the investor. However, that loan will stay in the seller's name. So whenever the deed moves, that does not mean that the financing for that property has to move. This is more of an advanced strategy. I've done the other two strategies. I have yet to do a subject to taking the property over subject to a mortgage. You can still take it over subject to any type of lien that can be on the property. So I have taken over a property. I've paid the attorney that was handling someone's judgment until I had the property renovated and was able to sell it. But the most common way when you hear subject to, someone is acquiring a property subject to a mortgage. Hey, Sam, you want me to wait to the end for any questions or anything and just keep rolling through?
Amber, did you have any questions?
Keep rolling through, or did anyone have any questions about these three?
No, I'm good.
Okay, cool. All right, so case study. So I have two case studies. So I'll do an acquisition case study, and then I'll also do a disposition case study. So this is a property that I bought for $3,750. So I didn't bring the entire $3,750 to the closing. Basically, all we did was we brought those taxes back current. So we came out of pocket $1,228,000 to bring the taxes current. And that remaining balance we were paying over time. And really, our particular situation, since there were liens on the property, that money was not going to the seller. This money was going toward the attorney that was handling a judgment as well as a collections company. But yours can be structured differently. Maybe you don't have any liens and you're paying that balance to the seller. So all in purchase renovation, and holding costs, because we got to remember holding costs, because these properties, if you're securing them and if you're buying materials, if you're paying for utilities, things like that, that stuff starts to add up. So all in, we were in at around $10,000. It was a 10-month hold, which was actually way too long. That's the other thing where you're going in with the partner. Sometimes you may have conflicting ideas. This should have been a 3-month hold at most, but things happen if you're investing. But we sold the property for $20,000 cash. So for this particular one, we actually had 2 exit strategies. One was to list it for $21,000 cash, or else to sell it for $49,000 owner finance. And we would have received a $2,500 down payment. We would have given them an 8% interest rate. We were looking at a term of between 8 to 10 years for them to have the property paid off. And we were going to try to keep their monthly note under $700. We wanted it to be competitive with what people are used to paying for rent. So since we had another move we wanted to make, we wanted to gain some liquidity. So that's why we sold the cash as opposed to making a whole bunch more money over 8 to 10 years. Because you think if we make a $49,000 purchase price and 8%, we're making 8% on our money as well at that. So that's really why I love owner financing. For this one, we just moved it off because we're trying to get some funds to work with a hard money lender for a flip. So the lead source was a car window decal. I got a sign on the back of my car. Hey, call me if you need to sell a house. And again, our exit strategies were to either own a finance or else to sell for cash. Any questions about the acquisition case study? Cool. So now this is a disposition case study. So this here is another property. I paid for this one $7,500 cash. The owner gave me a $500 discount. He was at around $8,000, and I'm like, can I give you $7,500? And we settled at $7,500. I sat down there at the showing proof of funds and letting them know I can, I have the money at the title company and everything, and it was pretty cool. But yeah, I paid $7,500 for this house, and the exit strategy was to sell with a lease with an option to buy, and I did that for $41,500. I ended up giving this person a $5,000 credit toward repairs, and I collected a $2,500 option fee up front. $850 a month was the rent, and we had an 18-month term. After 12 months, the tenant buyer, she hadn't secured her financing, so we converted her over to owner financing at 8% interest with a 7-year term. So she has a new payment of $675, and that includes her PITI. So her principal is in there, her interest is in there, her taxes are escrow, as well as her insurance. So the docs that we use was a lease, of course. We used the option document. We also, I provided her with the seller disclosure. And whenever you're closing out with an attorney, they're going to have a bunch of acknowledgments that they want you to sign as well. Hey, you're agreeing to this, you're in your right mind. And I forgot to put the docs once we converted her over to owner financing, but basically it was a contract for deed, because with this owner financing, you can own the finance where you turn over the deed as well. And you can also own the finance with the contract for deed. So it's the same way that we buy a car. Once your car is paid off, you get the title to that car. So we have the same agreement. Once the house is paid off, you'll get the title to the house. However, with her, since we had a prior relationship, because we had a lease option first for a year, I let her know that, hey, once your note has matured 50%, or once you paid it off 50%, I'll go ahead and transfer the deed. And again, I have to protect myself. So we'll have an attorney draw up a deed of trust, and we'll have a promissory note, and she'll just keep paying like she's been paying. It's just now she's really right there at home base for home ownership. She has the deed in her name, and she got all of this without going through a bank. And this lead source came from Facebook Marketplace, is where I found the tenant buyer. The property was a voicemail drop. So really, with real estate, you'll see that you do more marketing than real estate because, data is king and you got to go out there and get the deals. And that's oftentimes going to require marketing unless you're using real estate agents or wholesalers or something like that. But if you're getting your own deals, you have to become an expert marketer. So yeah, it was a voicemail drop. He didn't answer my voicemail drop. So I picked up the phone and called him and we chatted. I went over and saw the property and we ended up closing the deal. And again, the exit strategies for this one was to either own or finance it or else sell for cash to an investor. And this one we did owner finance, the lease with an option, and then end up converting her over to owner financing.
Hi everyone, Sam here from the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Make sure to hit that notification bell and that subscribe button and to visit us at blackrealestatedialogue.com.